Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my channel. Today's projects are Escaping to Dreamland with the Hero Art My Monthly Hero Kit for February 2022. I will be creating 2 cards for you today. One will be soft and whimsical, the other one will be bold and a little bit crazy. Here's a look at the kit this month. You are getting a 6x8 stamp set and coordinating dies. There is also a dot dream palette. So this is a watercolor dot palette, a water brush, and some black watercolor paper. The first card I'm going to create is going to be the soft and whimsical card. I will be doing a watercolor background. I'm starting with the Cloud Window Fancy die. There is also a frame that goes with this, but I will just be using the cloud window portion and not the frame. This is going to create some beautiful billowy clouds all around the edge of our card front. So I'm die cutting this from white cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm also going to use this ship, which is from the Dream Accessories die, and I'm just cutting this out of that scrap cardstock that I cut out of, or that fell out of the middle of my cloud window. Now, since that's a pretty tight squeeze, I'm going to line it up, hold that down with some low tack tape so I can die cut this. So getting the most out of my scraps that I can. I decided to add a little bit of color to my billowy clouds, so I am using Dusty Blue from Hero Art and a blending brush and just lightly going around the edges of my clouds. I just want to gently add some color, although you can use any color for this. You can even do the whole thing in like a galaxy type of scheme. There's really so many endless possibilities to use this window die from. Now, this is not part of the kit. This is an add-on, but I will be using that dot watercolor palette from the kit. Now, this is the ship that I had die cut, and I'm lightly ink blending soft brown just to the very bottom of the ship. Now we can move on to some watercoloring, and this is that dot palette that is from Hero Arts. It's exclusive to the kit only, and all you really need to do is just pick up a little bit of color. So this is great where you can just try a few colors out. You don't have to have a full tube of colors. I have some watercolor paper here that I completely wet with a paintbrush, and then I wet my paintbrush again and dipped it into some of those dots to pick up that color and just dropped it onto that background. Since my background is wet, that watercolor is going to spread on its own, which is great because it's going to create a really kind of wispy and just really whimsical look to it. And I really was experimenting here. I had no rhyme or reason to anything. I just wanted to have some color in the background that wasn't so planned out or strategic, because really that's how the skies are. And since I started out by wetting the cardstock first, I'm really letting the water do all the work. So I'm going to dry this with my heat tool. You could also set it off on the side to dry and let it just air dry on its own. But after it was dry, I'm bringing in Indigo ink. So this is just a really nice bright blue, blending all around this panel. I'm not too worried about the edges because I will be trimming this piece down. I wanted to also intensify this a little bit. So I am bringing in navy ink and going around that edges just a little bit more. Off screen, I did trim my panel down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so this is how it's looking so far. I decided to bring in the Looking Glass, which is the LG in my title bar, Looking Glass Flying Girl. I thought that would be perfect to add to the sky, and I'm going to die cut it out of pitch black cardstock, but I do end up changing that to Nautical later on. Then I also have a moon and the star from the Dream Accessories. The star, I'm going to die cut 3 times from gold glitter cardstock, and the moon, I just die cut from white. For my sentiment, I am using the Dream Messages, and there are a lot of great sentiments on here. It was kind of hard to choose which one to use, but I picked one, and I'm prepping my pitch black cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, and I'm stamping my sentiment in the Watermark and Embossing ink. Just to make sure I have good coverage, I like to stamp it twice, but I'm not going to push down too hard so I don't squish my letters because these are pretty delicate. Then I can sprinkle on some gold embossing powder. I'm going to tap off any of that excess. And once my heat tool is really nice and hot, I'm going to melt that embossing powder. And I don't know if you caught that there. I did tip over my embossing powder, but I was able to save most of it. Then I'm just going to bring this over to my mini paper trimmer and trim this down into a thin strip. Now I can start working on the assembly of my card. So I laid everything out the way I wanted it. I'm going to attach these gold glitter stars with my liquid glue, and I wanted to try adding some flicks of white to this background, add just a few more stars and a little bit more interest to the background. So I was experimenting a little bit with my white flicks, and I have the Picket Fence Distress Spray Stain. I just added a little bit to my surface, added some water, and then after I mix that up with my paintbrush, I'm going to flick this all over my background. It did add, you can see the white, but it does kind of dry back a little bit. So it wasn't as crisp of a white as I had wanted it to be. I added foam tape all around my cloud border. Now this would also make a gorgeous shaker card. I wish I would have thought of that when I was doing this, but I just added some foam tape to add a little bit of lift all the way around the edge. Then I'll finish adding the rest of my elements. So like I said before, I did come back and die cut that flying girl from Nautical cardstock, which is a dark blue. And now for the ship, I added a little bit of foam tape to the front end and just some liquid glue to the back. The back part of the ship is going to be on top of my cloud border, which is already raised up. So by adding that foam to the front, just kind of evens that out all the way across the ship. I also added just a little bit of foam tape to the center of my sentiment. And then I'm adding the liquid glue to the two ends of it because once again, that'll all be flush with my cloud border that I popped up. And that's going to pretty much finish up the front of the card. I just added it to a side folding white card base. So this is a great example of creating your sky or your dreamland sky with those watercolors that are included in the kit. Now for my next card, I'm going to go a little bit more wild and crazy on this one. This time I'm using the Swirls and Dots background stamp. So I removed the foam insert from my Misty tool and placed that background stamp in there. And then I'm going to take a piece of white cardstock and I'm just adding a little bit of removable adhesive to the back. I'm placing that cardstock face down onto that background stamp. And then I'm going to close it backwards and flip this over. So my cardstock piece is stuck to the bottom of my Misty. Now I'm prepping that with an anti-static powder tool, inking that up with the embossing ink and stamping that down. And I'm using my stamping bug tool to kind of put pressure over the door of my Misty. And since it is kind of hard to see in person, I did stamp that twice. And then I'm sprinkling on clear embossing powder. The clear embossing powder is going to trap the white of the cardstock underneath. So after this is all melted and cooled off, I'm going to do some ink blending on here, starting with the Taffy Reactive ink. I'm using my blending brush to apply the color, and I'm going to do this in about 3 different places on the front of my card, just kind of trying to create that visual triangle with that pink, so to speak. Now, to really make this pop and kind of get this going a little bit, I'm adding Purple Galaxy, which is just an amazing purple. If you're looking for a really nice purple, this is the one to get, and it's water reactive. So bonus part. So I added that all the way around my card. Now I wanted to kind of bump this up a little bit, and I had a little empty spot there. So I'm adding a little bit of lemon drop, but I don't want it to touch the purple. I'm just letting it touch the pink. I'm intensifying my edges with my navy ink, which some areas it looks blue and in some areas it's going to look an even darker purple. Now, since we embossed this, I'm just taking a towel or a paper towel and buffing over that to remove any excess ink that is caught by that embossing powder. Now I have an image from the My Monthly Hero Kit, and this is a really cool image. This was the first one I was drawn to. It's a door that opens up into just a cloudy background, and it kind of reminded me of Men in Black, you know, when they open the door and there's like this whole different universe out there. I just love this image. So I stamped this down on white cardstock with the Intens-ified black ink, and then I'm die cutting it out with the coordinating die. I also have a moon here that is from the Dream Accessories, and I'm just grabbing one of my blending brushes that have some leftover yellow ink and just kind of lightly blending that on. My original thought was to leave this image just black and white, but it was a little bit too stark, so I am bringing in a light blue and I'm coloring in that entire sky that the door opens out to. I also have just a little bit darker of a blue. I think it's like B000 and B00, I think it is. And just adding flicks of that darker color to one side, and then just a really light purple that I'm flicking from the bottom of the clouds up. I am leaving the rest of that image the white. Now for a sentiment, this is a really fun sentiment that is from, it says Alice in Wonderland. I thought it was pretty cool. I'll read it here in just a second. But I prepped that black cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, stamped it in unicorn pigment ink, and then sprinkling on white embossing powder and melting that embossing powder with my heat tool. Okay, so now I can read my sentiment and it says, I'm not crazy. My reality is different from yours. I love that sentiment because it is so, so true and it's just really fun. So I attached my door to my background with just a tape runner. Now I wanted to pop up the moon, but it's pretty skinny in some areas. So I just die cut it like 3 or 4 more times and layered that together with liquid glue just to add a little dimension to that. And I also popped up my sentiment with some foam tape as well. And then to add just a little bit of sparkle, I am going to be adding the sparkle lacquer pen over my moon just to jazz it up just a little bit. Now, one of the reasons I think this kit is so amazing is it gives you the chance to really get out of the box. There is no rhyme or reason to some things. This is like surrealism. And, you have these kinds of dreams where just nothing really makes sense, but they're a lot of fun. It really gives you a chance to play. So definitely keep your mind open about things and just have fun. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. Here are a few more videos I think you may enjoy.